Hey y'all, AirbornePatriot coming to you live. So, I never thought that I was actually going to do this really this early on. I write a lot. I really try to keep you all apprised of what's going on. And I figure after the almost 8-hour script that I wrote the other day, in regards to a speech that I would love to present to you as, 2A Second Amendment supporters, I'd also like to present it to the anti-gunners that seem that they're uneducated and unaware because of propaganda that's been going on for at least 30 years. I started thinking while I was vacuuming, of all things to do, about the Second Amendment and how, because the job that I do, I work with Homeland Security. I work with a lot of retired and active law enforcement, and I've had several conversations with them over the last few weeks. In particular, the Maryland police, the New Jersey police, where, as you know, it's all about illegal to own a firearm in those states. You can own them in your house, but you can't leave the house with them. You're completely disarmed to protect yourself outside of your own home. So criminals do whatever they want because, as we know, criminals don't follow the law. So I'm sure you're privy to the latest update with what's going on in Virginia. A lot of activists and lawyers and really smart, intelligent people are involved, and they don't seem to care. And they, as in the politicians, the governor on down in the government, they really don't seem to care. In the little tight group that I'm in, we seem to think that they have something up their sleeves. Very late last night, I sent out an update in regards to Governor Northam. He put out an emergency order. As you know, prior to the 20th, they wanted to enact some kind of gun control on the property, and all they got done was in the buildings themselves. You can't carry, which forever, really, it's been a gun-friendly state. It's been gun-friendly buildings. The politicians had nothing to fear because law-abiding citizens don't commit crimes. Imagine that. But now this governor and his cronies, his constituents, have decided that they fear for their lives. They can carry, but you cannot. And you, as in John Q. citizen, as well as any law enforcement, well, in all these gun-free states, law enforcement do as they want. They have what we call LEOSA, which is another topic that I wanted to get into, that we can get into in a little bit. So he just passed last night, real late. That's what they do. They inconvenience people and get things done before anybody can really speak up and voice their opinion about it. He put out an emergency order that states that even on public property, on the grounds of these buildings, you cannot carry a sidearm. You can't carry a weapon. That's insane, because you can't ban a public citizen from public property. We own it. We pay taxes. We own the property. We make sure that it's taken care of. You just can't do that. But as I said earlier, they don't care. And if you're following along, you understand they don't care. They don't care about you. They only care about themselves. That's not what we elect officials in for. They become our voice, what we want. And currently in Virginia, the entire state, minus a couple counties, are completely against it, and they have made it very, very, very clear that it's not what they want. And the governor said, I don't care. The politicians, the senators, I don't care. We're making a decision. This is what we want. We have a serious issue going on, a really serious issue with that, because the way that the Constitution is written, it's we the people. We elect you to represent us. And when you take it upon yourself with your little group of elites to decide that it doesn't matter what the citizens want, what my people want, we do what we want, you're breaking the Constitution. And in recent They have broken their oath countless times. And if you follow me reading what I post, it's a federal crime, it's a felony. So by their own words, by their own actions, they should be red flagged. I mean, just honestly. So I wrote this big long speech, and I want to share briefly because I could definitely speak it and you can hear it faster than I can post it and you read it. It's pretty long and I can make it pretty quick. So for the people that follow me, friends, family, they live in these states that are pretty much disarmed. It's next to impossible. You need an act of God to get a carry permit, unless you're law enforcement, which could actually change soon because of all this going on, unless we actually take action, which seems to be in order, following along with Virginia. And with talking about that, West Virginia has just introduced an option, Brexit, U.S. Brexit. Remember that from years ago over in Europe? Well, West Virginia has just said, hey, why don't you guys become part of West Virginia? Just secede from Virginia and become West Virginia. You know what that would do? It would add a ton of seats to West Virginia's voice, and it would really shut down the very small percentage left of Virginia. Honestly, I think the whole country as a whole should secede from the Union. Just prove a big point. Let's start again. Let's start fresh. Let's bring it back to small government. That would be the best option, honestly. Because this big government is now, I don't know if you know it or not, but it's a corporation. It's a corporation. It's no longer what our founding fathers had set up originally and what we still believe we have today. So let's apply some logic and bring into perspective for people that don't seem to understand what rights really mean. Per definition, a liberty or a right is whose protection from government interference and is guaranteed by the Constitution, our forefathers. So let's say, for example, civil rights being violated today or ever. Let's say only black women may exercise their rights at these buildings in Virginia. Men are not allowed. They will be escorted off the property and deemed felons. Could you imagine that? This is the First Amendment now. And as you know, without the Second, there are no other amendments. It's the guardian of all of them. So, speaking of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, one of them, freedom of religion, another guaranteed right per the Constitution. What if only Democrats were allowed to speak in or around these buildings and Republicans would be prosecuted? Imagine that. And in saying that, and many times our right to freedom of speech have been limited. All this PC stuff, politically correct, you can't say this, you can't say that. They've been limited but not removed yet. If we allow this to continue, if we do allow the Second Amendment to go bye-bye, we will lose all of our amendments. It's just how it's going to happen. If you remember, and I don't like really comparing it because nobody really wants to talk about it anymore because it was a horrible thing. But the Nazi regime, they disarmed the entire populace and then extinguished them all. Anybody that opposed them, because they had no way to defend themselves. So everybody that is socialist crazy, that wants to be it, they're all for it, free this, free that. Look at East Germany. Look at Berlin not too long ago. Look at Nazi Germany. Perfect examples of what happens with socialist and communism. It's not pretty. Is that really what you want? And you say, oh no, this is America. It won't be like that. I got bad news for you. It will be just like that. You will have no weapons. You have no way to disarm. You will have no way to defend yourself. Getting on to the police. Did you know that in 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that a police officer has no constitutional duty to protect you? Now, isn't that the promise that these politicians, our government promised us with disarmament? Maryland? Oh, don't worry, we have plenty of police, they'll protect you. The problem is that per FBI latest documentation, the response time for police is 8 to 18 minutes. If they even show up. They may not. You may call 911 and you get a busy tone. Remember that? Yeah, it's happened. The funding is not there. There's not enough police. In order for it to actually be efficient and effective, you would have to assign, and this is by a political review in California. They said you would have to assign a police officer to every single citizen for gun control and gun-free zones to work. Think about that. It won't happen. We don't even have enough officers on the street right now. And if you look at Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, it was ground zero. When we lived there years ago before we moved to Texas, it was ground zero. It was like being around Iraq again or Afghanistan. It was absolutely horrible. It looked like a war zone if you watched it. They were flipping cars. They were shooting at police. They were shooting at buildings. They were destroying their own communities. That makes no sense to me. As civilized society, what are you doing? Anyway, so there's a specific reasoning behind why our forefathers designed the Constitution. In regards to civil rights or slavery, the Constitution was written for specifically Americans, not foreign people that were introduced into our into our country with intent of servitude, not freedom. This was later amended, and I'm glad it was, because we're all humans, and skin color doesn't mean anything. You know, growing up, you had black, white, yellow, whatever color friends. It didn't matter. You know, racism and the hatred is a learned trait. It's not ingrained in us as humans. So let's talk about the 13th Amendment briefly. They abolished slavery and involuntary servitude. Could you imagine the outcry if that was restricted or removed today? It wouldn't be so smooth with all this talk and all this legal action that it's going on. You know, if you look at what happened in Baltimore, it was majority African Americans. It wasn't white people doing that. And I'm not being racist, and I'm not saying anything about it. It's just that's the demographic that lives in Baltimore City. If it was white majority in Baltimore City, I'm sure the same thing would have happened. Just maybe not so destroying their communities. But then again, if you look at Philadelphia games, football, they destroy their cities too. So again, desperation is a crazy thing. Being deployed, I saw desperation and what humans are actually capable of. I hope, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody that ever have to see and do what I had to do overseas. But if this continues, I guess we'll see. So, on touching on that topic of the 13th Amendment, if you do some research, and some people will be really surprised and kind of should feel ashamed for being racist, because, you know, the origins of mankind, where it all started, was actually Africa. Go figure. Mankind then spread across the continent, start new ways of life. Their skin tones changed based on sun exposure. So we got lighter as we moved into continents that didn't really have the sun exposure. Also, buildings were done, so shade, you know. So we all share the same origins, just different cultures. You know, talking about the rights that were afforded to just us as Americans. You know, it was designed on paper, Constitution, Bill of Rights, specific to us, but actually the whole ideal, the ideology was actually designed for the entire country, or the entire world. Correction, the whole world. Everybody should be afforded these same rights. You know, these people in power in these other countries have their own thinking, and that's dangerous. So I'm glad that we live in this country. I'm glad that we have things set into place and that we are civilized. So let's step into the 14th Amendment. Due process and equal protection. Both have gone to the wayside for a very long time, and it's been attacked. If we look at these extreme risk protection orders, ERPO, or red flag laws, which are in place in, I think, 18 states now, and I've written a very scary experience to try to make you understand, if you live in these states that are pretty much disarmed that we spoke about earlier, the dangers of these orders. And again, I've spoken to several law enforcement officers that are retired now. For one, have they served these? And they said yes. And there was actually, in their experience, I'm not speaking as a whole for the state, but in their experience specifically, they said that of the few that they served, only one was actually legit. The problem is with these orders is that they go on no evidence, no proof, no due process. They take it to the court, and the court says, yep, go ahead, take the guns. We'll deal with it later. Even President Trump, that everybody thinks he's on our side, he's not pro-American. He's not pro-freedom. Yes, he has done a lot of good for this country, but he has said that he's for gun confiscation. He is for these red flag laws. Take the guns. Due process later. And I actually was just talking about it the other day with the New Jersey officer that I asked him how he was able to do his job, breaking his oath and removing people's rights on a daily basis. He actually made the comment that, he should have arrested himself a couple times, breaking people's amendments, like multiple in one issue. He said he should have arrested himself. That tells you that, sometimes you got to do, you're just doing your job, right? That's what they say, you're just doing your job. So, I can't fathom how or why we even have anti-gun people in this country, or anywhere in the world for that matter, other than lack of education and propaganda. And it's Operation Mockingbird. Look that up. It was a CIA operative that was basically what we're seeing today. Mainstream media only sells, or only broadcasts what sells. They are owned by one of the 6 corporations, aka governments, and they only put out what they say is okay. It only meets their agenda, not both sides of the story. And we know everything has 2 sides, sometimes 3 sides to a story. So we have had years of propaganda fed to us, and they've kept us, our ancestors, all at war. For the last 30 years, we have been at war of some kind, and has been based on propaganda. Whether it was oil or money, because, a lot of these wars have been about oil. We all know this, let's not deny it. And others have been about the Federal Reserve and the one world monetary unit. When these countries say, nope, not doing it, we go to war with them. Imagine that. So, my question is to these anti-gunners, why are you so against it? And, with saying that, there have been a lot of anti-gun Democrats and Republicans, not really many Republicans that are anti-gun, but I'm sure somebody is out there. But they've actually switched sides in the recent weeks. Because before, as a sheepdog, we don't want general public to know what's going on, because we don't want to cause chaos. We handle the issue and move on. We don't want anybody to be alerted. We don't want anybody to know what's going on, because we don't want to disturb civilized society that we have established. But at this point, unfortunately, that we have no choice. Like I was saying to people, like, oh, you're in the militia. People who are in militia, they're deemed terrorists because that's what they're told. Propaganda. Militia are terrorists. I was actually recently called a terrorist because I asked about the local militia. We just moved back here to the East Coast, Pennsylvania. Texas, I was part of the militia. You know, as a citizen of the United States, you are part of the militia. If you're 18 or older, 18 to 45, I think the age range is, you are part of the militia. So I was chastised on a local group here asking about the militia because people with guns are bad and people with guns in the militia are terrorists. Yeah. So my question is to these anti-gunners, what are you going to do when this breaks out? Because it's not if, it's at this point when. Because listening to these people in Virginia, the entire state has become a sanctuary city, to a sanctuary city. They're not just going to go away. They're not just going to lay down and die unless they have to. They're not going to lay down. They may die for their state. They may die for their country, which is what I'm about to get into. Are they just going to lay down and die? Are they going to hide behind us, the patriots, the ones that are willing to fight? Because, you know, talking about this, the NRA, everybody's like, oh, they're so horrible. No, they're not horrible. What they are is fighters that have been fighting the fight by themselves for so many years with no citizen involvement. You can't expect somebody to do all the fighting while you're behind somebody, pretending you're trying to fight them. Hold me back, hold me up. You remember that as a kid? No, hold me back, I'm going to fight him. No, you're not. You're not interested. You want somebody to protect you. You want a bodyguard. Just like these politicians have bodyguards that are they're armed with guns. Holy shit. So if you apply this to citizens, that means that your armed people cannot be armed. You cannot be armed. You can't just specifically say, these people can do this, but you can't do it, but we can. Democrats are not Democrats today. They're socialist communists. Do as I say, not as I do. So do these people think we're going to protect them? Because that is the right thing to do. Me being a military veteran, we protect people regardless. And I even told these people that chastised me, you know what, I'll protect you anyway. And they came back and said, don't protect me. I'm not interested in your protection. Really? Because they believe the propaganda that nothing's ever going to happen. They're protected by the police. But the problem is in Virginia that the police are on the opposite side. They're not for the government. And from all levels, everybody's against the governor. Everybody's against these politicians that are trying to push it. The National Guard is against them. Who is going to protect them if this happens? We don't have a duty to protect you. We have a duty to protect ourselves. You know, like I was talking about in 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that there's no duty of a police officer. That police officer that carries that gun is for his self-protection, his self-defense, just like myself and other concealed carriers. We're not carrying for you. We don't have any duty to protect you. Will we? Yeah, probably. Will the police? Yeah, probably. We have no duty to do it. You're not going to force our hand to protect you. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to protect my family. I'm going to protect people that are close to me before I protect you. And that's why you have to stop being anti-gun, get some education, learn, go to the range, figure out what gun you like, buy it. Unfortunately, constitutional breaking, you have to go pay to get a permit to carry your weapon, unless you live in these 18 states that are finally like, oh, you know what? Constitution says it's protected. You don't need a permit. You don't need my permission to go carry your gun. Because as an American, you're free to do as you want. If you want to walk down the road and smoke a blunt and carry your sidearm for protection in case somebody tries to mess with you, you're free to do that in the free world. Politicians made it, they don't want that. Their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions are not written into the Constitution as such. You don't get to do that. It's written in stone. So, this is going to be a long video. Because, so, again, who's going to protect these tyranny supporters, these sympathizers? Honestly, yes, they are humans. Yes, they have rights. However, would you trust somebody after you save them to not stab you in the back? Ask yourself that. So let's talk about the Second Amendment, because that's the biggest topic. And I think always, honestly, it's been the biggest topic. You know, growing up in Maryland, we were restricted. You can't have a gun. You can't carry it outside the home. For the longest time, there was no self-defense law. If you shot somebody in your house, you were probably going to jail for defending yourself. And now we're seeing it that if you shoot somebody and they live, or that person shoots you, the criminal is protected under these new guidelines by these politicians. There's murderers, rapists, heinous crimes getting arrested and getting released by these judges. So there's corruption from all levels of government right now. And there has been. And speaking to these Maryland police, they're like, our hands are tied. Politicians, our chain of command, they don't want us to do anything. So we're not doing anything for anybody now, because we'll arrest them and they'll just get out. They'll be out in a day or two. So what's the point? So let's get back on topic here. Second Amendment. There's specific verbiage that was added protecting and preventing any changes to it. It's quite known and often misconstrued, misinterpreted, shall not be infringed. So, what does that mean? To encroach upon in a way that violates law or rights of another, the right of the people to bear and keep arms, shall not be infringed. So, Second Amendment. It's naturally divided into two parts. There's one clause, well-regulated military being necessary to the security of a free state. Second clause, the operative clause, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Bear means to carry, which means carry your weapon whenever, wherever you wish. It's written pretty clear, concise, easy to understand language. To fit the narrative of the agenda, they twist words to fit their needs. It doesn't specify what guns are and aren't authorized. As I said earlier, feelings, thoughts, and opinions don't matter either. It is what it is, shall not be infringed. It's an unalienable right. It's a natural right that cannot be changed. But these new politicians are trying really hard to change it. I'm sure if they had their way, that they would change the entire Constitution to fit their agenda. And sadly, with this fight with Second Amendment, what's going to happen is we're fighting for not our rights. We're not fighting for our rights. We're fighting for our next generation and to follow. Yes, we're fighting for our rights because we want our rights. But it's not about us. It's about our future. It's about our kids, grandkids, further on. So, I'll tell you what's happening. Some already understand this. People are so awoke. They're not even woke. They are awake at this point. Like I said, people have changed sides. They're going and buying guns because they like the idea of having a gun. They may never use it, but they understand that it should not be removed. It is something that's necessary because there is evil. There are wolves. And like I spoke and touched on earlier, as a sheepdog, we handle things before people know. We prevent people in the general population knowing what's going on. And that, again, the time has come that people need to understand. And because they understand, people are changing and swaying their thoughts and changing their sides. their stance. So again, these Democrats that pretend that they're Democrats, they're a Democrat's belief, and people call these Democrats liberals, and I have been guilty of this. But in fact, the definition of a liberal is somebody that believes in freedoms, equal freedoms. That doesn't fit the bill, what these people are. They're not even Democrats, because the belief system of a Democrat is not the way they speak and what they do. They're socialists. They're communists. It's the communist propaganda. That's the agenda. Some of you may have looked at the Agenda 21. By 2030, they hope to enslave everybody. Go look at it. So they spread this propaganda. They want to scare the masses and make false promises. If you comply, they promise you the world. They promise you protection. They promise you this. They promise you that. But as you see in these states that are disarmed, these Second Amendment breaches of contract, Maryland, New Jersey, California, New York, Massachusetts, there's so many states. It's exactly what I just said, a false promise. The police can't help you. The police are not obligated to help you. So the question is this really what you want? For you? For your kids? Grandkids? There's a very good possibility it'll become reality if we give up our rights. And with saying this, I learned this years ago. I might as well put everything out there that I know, because that's what the point of all of us doing this, advocating for this. So the agenda is coming into play. We break out to war. China and Russia are going to strike on both sides of us, as well as the UN from up north. As you may or may not know, I think I did put it out, that the UN is actually staging currently in Canada. Why? With all this Virginia stuff? That's why. So I think that's what the trick up their sleeve is. Governor Northam and his cronies. They know the police are against them. That's why they've disarmed the police and the citizens around them. They know the National Guard's against them. So what's next? Let's break our oath even more. Let's break the country law and invite the UN to come in and handle this. We could be dealing with something completely insane in the very near future. Could you imagine going to war, a Revolutionary War 2, having the UN come in from the north, China from the west, and Russia from the east? It might be opposite. So much is flying through my head. I have so much to say. I wrote so much. I literally spent 8 hours writing a speech the other day, because as you know, if you know me well, I have never been involved in politics. I fucking hate it. But when rights, not privileges, rights are being jeopardized and threatened, I have a duty to inform you and protect. So, you know the old saying, and actually, after I wrote this, it's kind of ironic, I think, because I was doing the research on Facebook, my old posts and stuff. The old saying, China made this comment, or maybe it was Japan. Behind every blade of grass was a rifle, so they dared not invade us. Apparently, the great people of Facebook have decided to say that that's actually propaganda and not real. And in fact, they had no fear of people having guns, and they didn't care. But okay, we know it's probably true, and it is true. If you look at the numbers from last year alone, or actually, the last couple of years, Obama was the greatest gun salesman ever, but Trump actually just beat his world record. There's something crazy. To every household, there's like a ton of guns. I don't remember the exact numbers. I have to look at my notes. So Another topic is all these voters coming in for these Democrats, why they keep winning these seats. And it's exactly that. This sanctuary cities for these illegal immigrants. They have been given voting rights. At this point now, they're being given driver's licenses, a privilege. They're given privileges and rights. They're given money, they're given a place to live, driver's license. Yeah, please, promise that you'll vote for me and you'll get all of this. No questions asked. You're safe from harm. We'll protect you. No problem. We're not going to send you back. False promises for the votes. And it's been working, as you see. Democrats won. There's no way. In Virginia, the Democrats won. There's a couple counties that are blue. The entire state is red. And the entire state is standing up saying, fuck you. We don't want this. And they're doing it anyway. So I'm looking at notes. I've spoken a lot, and I'm having to scroll at this point because I've spoken a lot faster than I wrote. So let's talk about gun control, gun-free zones, gun-free states, aka please commit your crimes here. I'm a soft target. Illinois, New York, Maryland, New Jersey, California, Tennessee, Michigan, perfect examples. Did you know that last year, end of 2019, in Chicago, Illinois, there were 530 gun homicides. And already, in the first month of this year, there's already 1,500. Baltimore, Maryland, ended with 347, and the numbers are already climbing this first month. New York City ended with 306. Now, what you have to understand is the numbers are much lower than, or the numbers are pretty low. We don't have a gun violence issue. We really don't, but I'll get on that in a second. You have to look at these numbers per capita. Baltimore, Maryland is smaller than both of these other cities that I just mentioned, and the number's higher. So yeah, it's not a gun violence issue. It's mental health, and it's people with evil hearts and evil intentions. You can ban guns. You can restrict guns. What you do by disarming your population, your society, your community, is allow criminals to run rampant and create these high numbers of gun violence. Because criminals don't follow laws. And I've said it countless times. And you know it. And these high numbers that these politicians are using as reasoning to ban and restrict guns, it's not the gun violence. Like on the street crime, it's actually suicide rates by firearms because it's a higher number than homicides by another person. It's people killing themselves that they're using against to validate their reasoning. What they should be focused on is not banning and restricting guns, but how to prevent a citizen, a fellow friend, family, from wanting to end their life. That's what we need to be focused on. That's what they should be putting all this money into, not almost $7 million Bloomberg has put into Virginia to confiscate guns. $7 million. Could you imagine that could be done? What could be done with that money to prevent suicide? Suicide affects me on the military side because we've seen and done a lot of bad shit. Nobody's caring population control. All they care about is taking guns. So, talking about all these states that are disarmed, Attorney General Barr initiated what is called Operation Relentless Pursuit. The media covered about this much. The media is covering nothing in regards to the Second Amendment movement because it doesn't fit the agenda, and they don't want the population of the entire world to know. So I have been working tirelessly to spread the word of what I learned to all of these other state groups that I'm a part of, because if we don't do this for each other, we have no idea what's going on. Social media actually has brought a lot of attention to all this gun violence, because back in the day, only the local newspaper would publish what was going on. Now, you can reach somebody across the world easily and let them know what's going on. So anyway, this Operation Relentless Pursuit, and some of these states are really going to surprise you because you don't ever hear about them on the news. I don't know why, but it's a task force consisting of both the political parties, the local police department, and multiple federal agencies, DEA, ATF, ICE, FBI. What they're going to do is they're going to go into the country's top 7 worst cities and attempt to fucking clean up the failed state. Their failed attempt, their test trial areas are now out of control. They can't even control it, so now they have to make a special task force. So, the 7 cities are Albuquerque, Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, Memphis, and Milwaukee. Now, these last 3? What? I had no idea. Did you? So, like I said, some of these are probably a shock because what? So we, as society, what we do is create career criminals. We, as a society, create career criminals. When a citizen gets incarcerated, that means they've done something that they can't be currently a part of society. So they lose all their rights. Okay? So if you stay incarcerated, you no longer have rights. When you get out, you become a free person, a free citizen. You get your rights back, right? Not always. With this agenda, you have to, and most people don't know this, is why I'm telling you, you have to petition the court to get your rights back. And if you've proven that you did pay your debt back to society and you're a good citizen again, you get them back. But if you don't fight for it, you won't. They don't just hand it back. So the problem comes in to, if you're released and you are that bad of a person that you're not going to be a part of society, a efficient, good citizen, you should never be released. You need to be incarcerated indefinitely or just executed. And that's what our forefathers used to do. And some will say, well, now we have established society. Yes, I agree. The same token, stop releasing these criminals back onto the street, because a law, a piece of paper, doesn't stop them. And time again, they've proven you wrong or correct. They have proven you to be a fool. They go and buy guns. In fact, you can go buy a gun in a street corner, in an alley in these cities, a lot faster. You have to go and do all this paperwork and everything else in a gun shop for law-abiding citizens. These laws don't protect you. They protect criminals that don't follow the laws to begin with. So this criminal gets out, a felon. We're talking about felons here, not just the everyday fucking petty criminal. So when a felon gets out, they've paid their debt, right? You know how hard it is for them to acquire gainful employment? The cost of living versus minimum wage doesn't match. So it's already hard for a regular law-abiding citizen to get around. And some say, oh, well, go to college, blah, 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 blah. There's people with college degrees that are working minimum wage jobs. It is fact. So this felon gets out and he's looking for a job, and in most of these states, people shun them. Society shuns them. I was very impressed with Texas. There was hundreds. I mean, there was 4 pages of small print. So there were thousands of companies that hire these felons directly out of prison to give them a second chance so we don't create a career criminal. Because some of them want to actually be part of society. They want their rights back. They made a mistake and they made up for it. They served time. But in most of these states, they're not given a second chance. So what they do is they keep going back into the system because, well, it's easy. They get fed, they get taken care of, they got shelter, no worries, no responsibilities other than mopping the floor or whatever else they're told to do. So you create a career criminal. Why? Why the inequality to a free citizen? I don't understand it. I just don't understand today's thought process. I don't understand this next generation's thought process. They are going to vote away all their rights. And that's why Virginia governor decided, oh, we better not mess with these current citizens. We'll just grandfather it because we know the next generation is just going to vote all their rights away anyway, so we don't have to worry about it. So we'll just deal with it for now, and then we will get our way. The problem is that we're not going to allow that. We're going to educate these people. And human free will, take it with a grain of salt, or you can take it to heart. All we can do is educate people because there's been false education, there's been false propaganda for far too long. So if we had a true non-infringed Second Amendment in all states, there would be a huge positive change in crime rate across the country. And it's been proven. You know, an armed society is a well-behaved and polite society. You probably heard that before. If not, it's true. You can see the statistics in 18 states have reestablished the constitutional carry, aka non-infringed Second Amendment right. And I have a link in my notes. But a perfect example is Maine. Maine 4 years ago decided they were going to go constitutional carry. They are now #1 safest state in the country. And it's followed up by Vermont. So criminals are very hesitant or reluctant to commit crimes when their intended victims can harm them. Go figure. Imagine that. Statistically, criminals are cowards. They prefer unarmed, helpless victims. It's easy. So again, understand this simple statement. And I know this is really long. I have a lot to say. It's been a very long time that I've been holding this all in. I post little snippets here and there, and I don't really know who I'm reaching, and I really hope that this video gets shared and people actually watch it. It's people with evil hearts, evil intentions, not guns that kill people. It's people with good hearts and good intentions that stop these bad people. We just saw it recently in Texas. Some of you may or may not know, and my wife actually argued this with me until I showed her the law. Being law enforcement in Texas, I had to know the law. Before this church shooting, there was another church shooting where a patriot citizen outside, not even in the church, heard what was going on, grabbed his AR-15, you know, that scary black gun, that's only a .22, by the way, grabbed it and went in and helped. Then it was illegal for you to carry your concealed weapon into a church. Last year, they passed a law amending that law that now pretty much anywhere you can carry your sidearm. Anywhere. Well, I say anywhere, but they're still red 51s, which means 51% of the profit is alcohol. They still haven't come up with times because there's other states Like here, you can drink all you want and carry. It doesn't matter. It's called you're being a responsible citizen. And there's no crime if there's no victim. Remember that. That's what I was talking about earlier. You can walk down the street, smoking a blunt, carrying your gun. If there's no victim, there's no crime being committed. There's no reason to harass you. Guns. They're tools. Just like a hammer on a construction site. Did you know hammer's #1 murder victim or murder weapon? A hammer. Go figure. And gun is #5 on the list, I think. It may have gone up one or down one. Either way, it's not #1. So these evil, bad, intentioned people without guns will just choose another tool. You will never get rid of hatred. You can only defend it. If you look at overseas, in Europe, you look at all these people that are disarmed completely of guns. I don't even think you can have them in their house. Like, they're completely stripped. They have knives. Bad people use knives. If you do some research and look up some videos, how fast a knife can do damage compared to a gun. For one, it's silent. And it's quick. And you can do really quick damage to a human body. And it's been seen in subway stations across Europe. Like, it's happening. You don't need a gun to do bad things. You can take a pen and turn it into an assault weapon. Which is an assault weapon ban. Oh boy. An assault is an action, which means assault weapon is a pen. It's a fork. It's anything that you assault somebody with is an assault weapon. So it's kind of a joke. So where does this come from? This hatred towards another human being. Perhaps, like I spoke earlier, desperation. It's a hell of a drug, to say the least. We have been in a depression for many years. Trump has actually corrected a lot of this issue with money. He has done a lot of good, and he has done a lot of, not a lot, but he has done bad as well. It's, how it works. Perhaps it's a corrupt judicial system. The justice system is corrupt. We know this. These judges are letting these criminals go. It's every tier, every level of the government is corrupt. And it's not like the old days where a piece of paper was written that Johnny So-So did this. It's now in a digital system that is accessible in every single state by any law enforcement officer or any judge or anybody of authority can go into the system and look up your entire past. The old days, you could go to a new city or a new state if you really wanted to get away and start a whole new life. Can't do that anymore. So don't become a criminal. Isn't that what everybody says? Yeah. Okay. It's easier to say that than actually do it. With some of these laws that are being passed, they're taking law-abiding citizens and making them felons. So let's touch on that real fast. I really don't want to hold you all up. It's almost been an hour already. It's real stupid easy to end up with a felony on your record. And I say this as simply as, say you have a child, you're separated and you forget to pay or refuse to pay child support. You become a felon. So under these new guidelines, you're no longer afforded the right to protect yourself. Yeah. So it's crazy. I have been a concealed carrier for a very long time. And some call me paranoid. It's not paranoid. It's being prepared. The society we live in and the things that I know and the things that can happen and what humans are capable of, I carry 24/7. It's just that fucking simple. Okay? I've never done anything ill-intended with this firearm. In fact, I've only had to pull it twice. Twice. And I didn't actually have to pull the trigger because it was enough of a deterrent that that fucking criminal said, you know what, forget this. I'm out. I was just kidding. Threw his hands up and said, oh, I don't want any trouble. He that keeps not his arms in time of peace will have none in time of war. Remember that. So all these politicians from past to present, whom have enabled and put forth unconstitutional laws, should have been and still should be prosecuted. It is a federal crime, a felony. So by their own guidelines, they themselves should be imprisoned. But remember, it's do as I say, not as I do. So just to spread some truth, and I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back because I never really wanted to do this, but I don't mind it. I've been on TV growing up. It's nothing new to me. Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 241. Conspiracy against rights. Chapter 115, treason. 1918, penalties for violation of oath. 731, explicitly makes it a federal offense. And then the Executive Order 10450 outlines how they will be punished. Imprisonment, fines, death. It doesn't say death, but it should. Our safety, our liberty, depends upon preserving the Constitution of the United States, as our fathers made it inviolate, which means cannot violate it. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow men and women who pervert the Constitution. Do you remember who said that? Abraham Lincoln. Is this all making more sense now? I hope that I have changed your views. And if not, whatever, again, it's free will. Do what you want with it. Grain of salt, take it to heart. But the fact remains, if you're restricted or lose your rights completely, especially this protector, the guardian of them all, the Second Amendment, you will lose them all. If you want peace, prepare for war. Airborne Patriot, out.